Hi everyone, my name is Miss Reasso, and I am going to be going over some helpful hints for our very first lab in Mat 152. That is on chapters 1 and 2. So your labs all have a similar setup in the sense that you'll have your objectives listed first, and then some directions before you get into any problems. One thing to keep in mind is that the labs I am showing you here today will probably have different values than the labs that you have on your sheet because this lab has data from a different semester than the current semester. So while the directions and tips here are going to be the same regardless of those numbers, keep in mind that you'll see different numbers in here or possibly different graphs. Okay. One thing to keep in mind is that you should be doing your work yourself and you should not be receiving any assistance from anyone other than your instructor. And then you can also use your notes in your calculator as well. We also do not want typed answers for your lab. So we recommend if you have access to coming into the libraries on campus to print them there. You can print in the libraries. The librarians are very helpful for that. Otherwise, you can write on a sheet of paper and then take a picture of that with a cell phone or something and then insert it into the document. If you have any issues or need some help with that, please reach out to your instructor. Okay. So some helpful tips for this first lab are to obviously read your instructions very clearly. One thing we want to note is any time that we have to do an explanation, we should be answering in complete sentences that are grammatically correct and make sense to anyone. And then we also want to make sure if we are doing calculations that we are showing our work for those calculations. These are real world scenarios, so we also need to make sure we're putting units and answering in the correct format, whether that's rounding or like a specific type like fractions or decimals. Okay. Now, like I said, these are real world scenarios. The majority of the data that we see here are from the surveys that you guys fill out at the beginning of every semester. So some of our numbers might not be very pretty, and that's okay because that's how it is in the real world. So just keep that in mind while you are doing your work. We'll get some weird answers on some of these. So let's start at number 1 here. We have our histogram, and it may or may not be the same histogram with the same or different questions. We want to make sure that we are carefully reading our histogram and what it means. So up here we have our y-axis label and our x-axis label, along with our title for what we have here. So this first one wants you to label your frequencies on top of each bar. So each bar here, you should have a number labeled above it for that problem. How many types of cereal are in the data set? Make sure that you are counting that. And then be careful when you are looking at your questions. They will usually tell you how to answer. So this wants you to answer as a percentage in parts C and D. For question 2 here, we're looking at an ogive. So keep in mind, again, your labels on your graph. Ogives, we have our cumulative frequency here. So as you are answering that, keep that in mind that this is cumulative frequency. And you'll see on some of these, they say, show how you got your answer. Remember, that is showing your work. Same thing up here as well. We then have our pie charts, right? Pie graphs. These are another type of visual data that we can use in the real world in many applications. So the main thing here, again, make sure you are reading carefully. Parts A and B are asking how many students. So our answers should reflect that, right? A student is a whole entity, so make sure that you are answering in whole entities. Okay. And then part D, you can use C as a guide here, but it wants you to make some comparison between your male group and your female group. So make sure it is a comparison that you are using both male and female, both pie charts for that. Now, number 4 is where we have the biggest chunk of our information. And for number 4, and then the rest of the lab as well, we'll be using this information. You'll be using the data that is in the Blackboard course with the lab. I think it's called like male heights for that. And what we are going to do is construct a frequency table for that. Now, yours may or may not be 8 classes, depends on the data for that semester. But we will build the class limits, the frequency, calculate the frequency, the relative frequency, cumulative frequency, find the midpoints, and the class boundaries. We also need to make sure we calculate our class width here. Some people forget this quite often because it's not in the actual table, so be sure that you do your class width calculation. Now, if you are having trouble with this, I would highly recommend going back to 2.1. And I would also recommend using the calculator steps in there. Okay, if you are having any issues with your calculator at all, definitely reach out to your instructor or go to the support room to get help with your calculator. Okay. But there should be some examples in 2.1 that can help you set this table up. I know it's big and intimidating, but just follow the steps that are in that section and it should help out a lot. Question 5 here goes back to our chapter 1 material. So it is more about definitions, variables, samples, populations, and such. And then number 6 here is about our histogram. So we are going to use this frequency distribution table that we set up here to construct our histogram. So keep in mind that when you're making this histogram, you should be using class boundaries as one of your labels for the spacing on your axis. And keep in mind you should have labels for words for what your X and Y axis are, as well as a title. And you can refer back to number 1 as an example for how the title and label should be set up. Okay. If you do not want to use this grid, that is perfectly fine. You can delete it and make your own. Or if you are drawing it out by hand and you're taking a picture of what you've drawn, then you can delete this and insert your own picture as well. And then the last part just wants you to make an observation about your histogram so that you can answer some questions. Okay. And at the end of each lab, you'll notice that there is a grading rubric. It does give you some insight into how the grading will be on the program grade scope. Okay. Once you have your lab submitted and once it's graded by your instructor, you can go back into Gradescope and review that feedback as well. So if you have any questions or need anything, be sure to reach out to your instructor.